I cannot find anything to watch.
Well, you have Netflix, right? They have tens of thousands of movies and TV series, and
And I looked through all that. And I could not find anything.
you look through all of it?
All of it.
You have a huge digital movie library on Fandango, right?
Yep, yeah, 400 of my favorite films, hand curated, the best of the best. Most of them are in 4K.
Well, there you go.
I don't want to watch any of that.
Okay, you have Prime, right?
Yeah, listen, I think I'll just watch some 70s fast food commercials on YouTube.
Ah, the famous Bonanza salad bar. Hey, this really inspires me. First, a bed of crisp, fresh lettuce, luscious ripe tomato, a ring or two of raw onion.
Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. My name is Chris, and as always, with me is my good friend...
Dave. I got it right this time.
Yes, you did. I was going to come up behind you and let you know that, in fact, it was Dave, but you nailed that one, so good job. Yeah, we're here today talking about a fun topic that we'll get into, but before we get into that, what's going on, Dave? It's been a while since I've talked to you.
Oh, not much. Just, surviving spring. I am allergic to everything that is green and everything that grows.
Yeah.
I cannot be around the Jolly Green Giant or his friend Sprout. I'm highly, deathly allergic to those two guys. So everything that's growing has made me itch, sneeze, eyes water. It's beautiful. It's spring, and I do love these searing, brain-numbing sinus headaches too. It's my favorite part of the year. Eyes nearly bleeding. It's hurting so bad.
I'm right there with you in the allergies. And I was thinking this cycle as I was, going through my upteenth box of tissues. I wonder if that is subconsciously why I prefer winter, because as a child, I always dealt with this every spring. And so then I was just like, oh, you know what? In winter, I'm not suffering. And maybe that's why I'm kind of partial to that season.
Yeah. December, January, and February are allergy safe seasons here because it's cold. Everything's dead. And,
Yep.
But yeah, it'll be fine. This time of year I always get stuffy, and I have an allergy to antihistamines, so I can't take anything over the counter for it. I mean, I just basically am on my own. So, and antihistamines, they make you so tired anyways. I don't know how you can function on that kind of medicine, so it's probably for the best, Otherwise I'd just be a zombie. Just drinking NyQuil during meetings at work. What are you drinking there, Dave? Oh, this is it's a blue slushy. That's a NyQuil, Dave. Put it down. I could just imagine those conversations where they're pleading with me to stop drinking NyQuil like it's a Pepsi.
Well, we had our health episode not too long ago, and I wonder, have you ever tried like a neti pot or something like that for seasonal allergies?
I have, right? And those things help, right? Sinus irrigation and all that stuff. It's super gross to talk about, but those things help, right? But they help for the moment. And you can't be neti potting all day long. Again, something I should do during the middle of a meeting to be like, what are you doing? You're pouring a thing in your nose. Stop, sir. Stop. I can just imagine that as well. I don't know. Maybe I should do those things when I'm not on camera at work. Maybe that's the moral of the story. Drink your NyQuil, use your neti pot when you're not on the camera. But, we brought up health. I have a little story here and a question for you. This is something I'm very curious about. Let me set the story up. As our listeners, if you've listened to us for any length of time, you probably know we live in Southwest Missouri, very near Branson. And Branson is a tourist town, right? And, you could ask, is it a good tourist town? Is it a big tourist town? It's in transition, and it's having a rough time, but there's still a lot of touristy stuff there. My wife and I went there recently and had dinner. And Chris, I don't know if you go there often, but restaurants in Branson, tourist towns usually do a pretty good job. But I don't think Branson does the greatest of jobs. It's my impression that the food there is rough.
Yeah, it feels like it used to be better, and that it's kind of slid a little bit. But to be fair, we do not go there very often. I think I've been to Branson maybe twice in the last 5 years. Something
Oh,
like that.
goodness. Okay. Yeah. So we're there at least once a month.
Wow.
It's sometimes more than that. So, yeah. But anyways, for a tourist town, right, if you've gone to, when I think of tourist towns, the two that come to mind are Vegas and Orlando. And the food there is in Vegas is exceptional. In Orlando, pretty darn good. Branson is just, man, it's rough. But anyways, we went to a restaurant there, and this is going to lead back to a health question, I promise. But my wife and I got a meal. We shared a burger. It took a while to come. We went to a chain restaurant. I won't say which chain because I do like this place. But it was a sit-down restaurant, and I go to use the restroom. I come back, and I see the burger on the table. And from a distance, right, we're sitting outside in a nice outdoor seating area overlooking the lake, and it's very nice. So I'm walking, but from a distance, I notice the burger doesn't quite look right. So I get to the table, and I've only seen my side of the burger. We ordered it a little bit pink, and my side is red. And I look at Mary's side, and somehow it's worse. It's basically uncooked. And I was like, how the heck does this happen? We looked at it like, this is inedible. And not only did it make me not want to eat, that meal right then, but it kind of put me off beef, right? So I was going to ask you this, as a vegan, I don't know if you have this experience as a vegetarian, excuse me, because Chris, you announced in your last in the last health episode that you're a vegetarian.
Yeah, I thought you were trying to escalate that.
No, well, yeah, I mean, a vegan, that is pretty different. That's the commitment. You just haven't committed enough. But do you get that scenario where you'll have a meal and if if you have a meal with chicken in it and the chicken's not good, if it's chewy or fatty or whatever, veiny, you're probably not going to eat chicken for once. Ew, that's gross. But as a vegetarian, right, you don't get a bad cauliflower, or you don't get a bad, you know what I mean? I mean, it's different. I got to imagine that if you get something bad, it doesn't put you off that food. It's just not pleasant in the moment. Is that true? Is that just a meat thing, or does it apply to other foods as well?
No, I have had that experience, and it's not so much that you get a bad, cauliflower or whatever. It's that you get a bad preparation of it. So, like, even mentally, I find it's a different perspective, right? So, like, I understand completely what you're saying, where you get the bad piece of chicken, and then the next time you're like, maybe I'm not going to order the chicken.
Yep.
Whereas with a vegetarian menu, I find it's just more like, oh, I just didn't like the way they treated that. So now I'm going to try a different vegetarian dish, or next time I go to a different place and I'm still fine with the cauliflower or whatever it is. So I will say that is a different experience. And also I've noticed it really strongly in cooking. So like if I'm cooking meat, my paranoia in cooking that meat is much more than if I'm cooking a vegetable. And it's actually made cooking a much more pleasant experience for me, just because I don't have to worry so much about that. If you undercook your broccoli a little bit, so what?
You don't get trichinosis from undercooked broccoli, right? Yeah. That makes sense. It was an interesting moment. And in that moment, I was like, maybe I should become a vegetarian, because it was so gross that I haven't been able to eat beef since. There's certainly not a cheeseburger. And I'll order it burnt in the future at a restaurant. The little bit of pink, it was just raw in the middle, which is it's gross.
Did they fix it for you?
Yeah, it took so long to get the burger that we were running out of time. I mean, it was a 45-minute wait from the time that we ordered till the burger came. So we had to just they took it off the bill, and we were splitting it. So that was our main meal. So that was we had the fries and a little bit of an appetizer. But yeah, well, okay, all right. Now you see, you're selling me on vegetarianism right there, because I can deal with a bad piece of meat. Really is gross, but a poorly cooked head of broccoli isn't gonna. Isn't going to do anything, right? Just maybe make you not enjoy the meal in the moment or give you a tummy ache. Well, this is not an episode about undercooked burgers or Chris's life advice as a vegetarian, as much as I would like to talk about both of those things.
Future episode.
I have a question for you. Another question. This is not as long. This doesn't involve a story about me at a restaurant. Are you entertained? Let's answer that. And this applies, movies and TV, but also I think we can bring music into it. But are we better off as consumers of entertainment and media, and that could also be things like sports, news, whatever. Are we better off in the streaming age than we were 20 years ago in the more traditional, delivery through cable satellite, going to the video store, the mail-in Netflix experience, and then this typical studio experience, right? Because so many of these movies now are, financed or co-funded or bought by streaming services and then delivered to your home without ever going to the theaters. Are we better off in this day and age? And then on the other side of that coin, are the people who produce this entertainment, the content producers, the writers, actors, directors, producers, are they better off under this system? Are they in an environment where they can be more creative, create better things, take more risks? Or are they better off under the old studio network system that existed 20 years ago? It's a big question, and I don't know if I have the answer. That's why I want to talk it through.
All right. Well, I feel like I have answers, but I will not jeopardize this episode by just shouting them out.
You're going to go right to the end?
No.
Short episode, folks.
I have strong opinions about this, and it's not something that I just thought about in terms of preparing for this episode. Like I've been asking myself these questions from the moment that Netflix started streaming content. And then how that ballooned, and you and I were both there.
Oh yeah,
right at the beginning.
At the start, I got my original Netflix box made by Ruco, and the old original one. It did one thing, which was Netflix, and there was like 80 movies on there. Like a stand-up special. I remember the first thing I ever streamed from that, a stand-up special from Zach Galifianakis, live at the Purple Onion, I think it was. Where he was doing a stand-up back when he used to do stand-up. It was absolutely hilarious. His little bit was that he would sit at a piano and do jokes while tinkling out. Tinkling, I don't think that's the right word, but doing little songs and stuff and using the piano as a prop. And very funny. I remember that streaming, but there was so little to watch. Right, a lot of just like super, it was like direct to video stuff at the time, and not a lot. But I remember that was memorable. I still remember that special.
It was like late night TNT programming.
Yeah,
was the intro to streaming. For the longest time, it was just whatever Netflix could license.
Yes,
and honestly, I think I kind of preferred that
stuff on the margin, on the fringes of entertainment.
So not even so much that. I liked that it was curated, even though it wasn't like tastefully curated. It was curated by what will people sell us and what can we throw on this service, but it wasn't a fire hose, right? It was still manageable.
Yeah.
And we joked in our cold open about how, you went through all 10,000, whatever. It's probably more than 10,000.
That wasn't a joke. That was a real conversation. I don't know why you're saying that to our listeners. You
poured through 10,000?
I did. Days I spent looking at everything on Netflix. My eyes were bleeding. I keep blaming it on the allergies, but now I'm thinking it may just be the days without sleep staring at a screen. Yeah, that's interesting that you would say that, right? Because the early days. Maybe we could just step back a little bit. Let's, because just in case folks don't recall our digital versus physical discussion, which is something we did about a year ago. You and I exist on different ends of the digital versus physical spectrum. You could consider us extremes. We have good friends. Our friends from the Retro Gamers, Anthony and Larry, also represent extremes in this too, right? And I don't like physical stuff. I prefer to have it digitally for the most part. Although I think I've kind of changed my opinion on a handful of things. So I'm really on the I don't even have a CD or a DVD player in the house. That side, right? Everything is streamed. Whereas on the other hand, you still buy a lot of physical media, maybe more than most. I think we represent the extremes for the most part.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm screwing up your structure of this episode or the way you wanted to talk about it, but one of the reasons I do that is to the point I just made, which is it's curated. I really struggle when I have unlimited choices.
Yes,
and
I do too.
we try to do a lot of research for this show, and we try to present educated opinions, but something we don't do very often is cite sources, but I am bringing out a cited source for this. There is a book that I read a few years ago called The Paradox of Choice by a psychologist named Barry Schwartz. And it is a phenomenally interesting book, and it talks about studies that they've done where the more options you have to make a choice, the less satisfied you are with that choice. And I completely feel that in my own life. So, do I have the streaming services? Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely hate it when my wife and I cannot immediately agree on something and we're just scrolling through icon after icon after icon. I can't stand it. It drives me crazy. So having a shelf of media I can, kind of just run my finger over and be like, boom, that's what we're going to watch. Or if we're talking music, have a shelf of CDs that I can slide through and be like, boom, that's the one. And I will even go as far as to use that to make the choice, but then I'll go stream it from Apple Music or stream it from Netflix. But I had that mechanism to make the choice. And that's a really big deal to me for some reason.
That is very interesting. On the streaming services, I think one of them, I'll say, does have what feels like a curated approach where everything kind of fits the theme and their standard of quality. And that's Apple TV. I mean, I don't get overwhelmed looking at Apple TV. It's like, okay, all of this is quality. Whether I like it or not, right? I still respect it. There's not filler junk on there. Unlike Netflix, which is just full of comedy specials from stand-ups you've never heard of and foreign language films. That is Apple TV is a little bit more selective, whereas Netflix throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. I see how that could be very challenging.
And as much of an Apple fanboy as I am, I've actually never subscribed to Apple TV Plus. So I have no experience with that platform.
Okay.
I don't know what they have.
I have, and it's good stuff, right? Their original stuff is good. The stuff that they show that is restreaming, they own the Peanuts catalog, for example. They own the limited streaming rights for most of the Peanut catalog. It's great, right? Charlie Brown's Christmas and all that stuff. Really good stuff is on there.
Yeah, I'm going to have to subscribe because I really do want to watch Severance.
Yeah, that's on our list. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a break in the stuff that we're watching to be able to slide that one in. So I will subscribe to that in the near future, but I haven't. So it's interesting to hear that they are more thoughtful in how they curate, and honestly, that does not surprise me at all, given that it's from Apple. So with that idea, who do you think is the worst at curating? Because I have an opinion, but I'm curious what your opinion is.
Peacock is pretty darn bad. Both in terms of their originals, the films they get. Sometimes they get decent ones early. Paramount Plus is a little bit better. The Paramount Plus is pretty good. Max is okay. I would say just in sheer volume, I think Netflix is probably the worst. But in terms of high failure to hit rate, I think Peacock may be the most frustrating. It seems to present me everything I don't want to watch, and I've got to go find stuff that I do. That probably Netflix, just its sheer volume, and there's no theme, right? Like Netflix is, if it exists, we'll stream it. And whereas there's a little bit more thematics going on with the other providers. What's your take?
Yeah, your Peacock analysis is pretty stellar, but I give it to Netflix because to me, it is just not only a giant pit that they have just dumped every piece of content they have into, but also navigating it is extraordinarily frustrating.
It is.
I hate the autoplay stuff, I mute my TV whenever I'm searching through Netflix because it drives me crazy.
I think from also from a find it standpoint, Hulu stinks.
Yeah,
Disney Plus is actually pretty good, and I know you can get you can search Hulu through Disney Plus, but it still doesn't make Hulu easier to search. But Disney Plus is good because it's also you talk about curated. It is very much curated, and it's extremely well organized and responsive. But when you go into Hulu, it's like I don't know what I'm looking for, and Hulu's got some decent stuff, but. Their TV series are better than their movies. I'll say that Hulu is not.
Oh, definitely.
It's not the home of great films to be streamed.
I also give Hulu and Max some credit because their interfaces are nice. I mean, the big icons, I can see them from across my living room. Disney Plus drives me crazy for that reason. Like, all of their icons are crazy small. And I'm like, I can't even tell what I'm looking
You're
at. I
having
have
to
to
get up to the TV
and get
and
closer to my, yeah, I'm
put
like
your
an
hand
old
around
man.
your eye. And,
Yeah, exactly. Get my little jeweler's loop out to figure out what it is that my cursor's on.
this one pixel, that says Bluey. Let's go watch that, kids. It's 1 by 1 pixel.
Yeah, so I would encourage, because I know all the big streamers are listening to the show right now,
Yes,
and they're
please.
chomping at the bit to figure out how can we make these services better. Work on your user interfaces.
Yeah.
I mean, man, just hire a consultant, bring them in, have them make pleasant experiences. And I wonder if that's like the crux of my curation issue. Like, if all of them were really simple to dig through and to find things, maybe I wouldn't feel the way I feel.
Well, I have a Fandango library, formerly Vudu. I still call it Vudu, and 400 or so movies and TV shows, and even it, with a curated selection of things that I bought for myself. I struggle sometimes to find the things that I bought to make sure that I have the right thing. So yeah, it's not great either. It wasn't, I think they're trying to make some improvements to it, but I haven't seen a big like a moment where like, oh, this is now easy to use.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I run my own Plex server of things that I have collected, and I never feel lost in that interface, which is not to say it's the greatest interface, because it isn't. But I wonder how much of it is I'm the one that put it together.
Yeah.
And so I have an intimate knowledge of that selection, and so therefore I don't mind digging through it the way I mind some of the other services. I wonder if that's part of it too.
That may be it. Yeah, and I've used your Plex server, and it is very nice. You got a good setup there, so thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of streaming. So, we talked about how it started out, the Netflix box. It was, some weak collections. I think it took several years for them. And at that point, they're just buying content from other places. It's true of all the streamers at first, right? There are not a lot of originals. I did a little analysis, though, on Netflix. They started doing their first series, their first original series was House of Cards, Kevin Spacey, political thriller drama. That was very successful, lasted several seasons. I remember we didn't watch it. It's not our type of show. But remember people talking about it. And I'm sure it was good, right? But Mr. Spacey got in a little bit of trouble. I had to leave the series, and then it was no more. But that lasted for 7 years. One of the earliest movies, this is, I believe, the second streaming movie, the dates were a little fuzzy, the second streaming movie that Netflix did that was original. Would you care to guess who the filmmaker was?
When you say it, I'm going to know it, but I can't come up with it.
Adam Sandler's Ridiculous Six.
Oh, okay.
Sandler
That's not what I was thinking.
Sandler signed an early contract with Netflix to make several films, and he did, right, from his Happy Madison company, and they're all pretty rough, bad. This one was awful. I remember being so excited. New Adam Sandler movie, let's sit and watch it. We watched like 20 minutes, like, we're shutting this off. Never went back to it. It was so bad. It was a Western, the Ridiculous Six, like the Magnificent Seven. There you go. Just think about it and think about all him and his crew, Kevin James and all his usuals, right? And it was rough. But there was, in 2015, Netflix had 2 original movies. One of them, Ridiculous Six. I don't remember what the other one was. In 2016, the following year, they had 17 original movies on Netflix. That is a massive change, a massive investment. If you said each one of those movies was, even if it was just, $50 million, at that point, you're approaching $1 billion spent on new movies. And sure, some of them were more than 50 million, maybe. I looked at the list and I don't know if I recognized any of them from that list. So I probably should look at it again, but that's a big investment, right? And then everybody started to follow suit. Amazon started doing their originals in 2018. And I looked through like the Amazon originals list. I actually got it up here. And I mean, it takes a while to get to, an original Amazon movie that you recognize. I remember recognizing a handful of them. Like one of them, Brittany Runs a Marathon, was a comedy that got mentioned on a site that I visit. If it hadn't been mentioned, I would have never known it. It was a comedy. You got to go down to like the Borat movie in 2020 before you really see original Netflix content, original Prime content that was good enough to remember. And then they did The Future War shortly after that in 2021. So all these streamers, and all of them have an original component to them. They all have that, right? They're trying to build their own content. The content goes into their library. They could potentially sell off rights to other streamers to show it. That happens regularly if they think they'll make more doing that. I'm trying to think of movies that I really enjoyed that were originals. You can see that investment bump up around that 2016, 2017 time. 2020, 2021, 2022, a lot of new stuff came on streaming because COVID, people were in the house. They were looking for things to do. The Tiger King phenomenon. I don't know if you recall that. Did you watch that?
No.
Okay, yeah, don't. It's well done, but it's also just wrong and bad, and yeah, you don't want any part of that, Chris. Yeah, definitely. That was a huge success for Netflix. That was more in their, TV reality side, but huge success. It showed that these things were feasible. But I look at the list of movies that were done in Prime, and I go back and look at my list of that were done in Hulu or Netflix, and I ask the question, would these movies, should they have been made, if they would have tried to make them through the traditional studio system, how many of them would have moved forward? Does that, I think not many of them, right? Like, maybe 5%, if that. So how are I think of the business model, how are these streamers making money when it costs so much to make this content?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. It's a good question. And to get into that, I want to rewind back to House of Cards. And I want to talk about that for a minute. Because when Netflix put House of Cards into production, it was an effort where they decided we are going to make content from a data-driven perspective. And they're getting all these analytics from their streaming services. They have their magic algorithms, and they know how to crunch that data. And they are like, okay, what is it that people respond to? What do they watch? What do they, blah, 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 blah. And that's really kind of the thought process they used to figure out, okay, what show or movie, what are we going to bankroll? Because that was a real watershed moment for Netflix. Nobody thought that Netflix could be a studio. Like they thought, oh, that's just the place we license our content. Yeah. And Netflix, and I'll give them full credit for this, they had enough foresight to say, if we make the content, we don't have to license the content. So it's a very attractive place for Netflix to be. And I totally understand why they wanted to go that direction. So they decide we're going to do House of Cards, that this political thriller, it was a remake of another property. So it had some history to it. They knew people would like it. At least the data told them that people would like it. But then Netflix went and did an incredibly smart thing. And I'm going to contrast this with something Amazon did here in just a minute. But Netflix went and they got the home run sluggers of the day. Yeah, this was 2013 when they're producing House of Cards. David Fincher directs the pilot. Kevin Spacey stars in it. And you alluded to Kevin Spacey's issues. 2013, Spacey was an actor's actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he could do no wrong. And if Spacey's name was attached to it, it was going to draw eyeballs. So Netflix not only says we're going to try to produce this, but they are going to dump enough money and effort into it that they are going to give it the best shot of success that they possibly can. The final thing Netflix did with House of Cards is they marketed the crap out of that thing. You could not go anywhere on their site without seeing House of Cards. You couldn't pretty much go anywhere on the internet without seeing House of Cards. And if you lived in a major area like Los Angeles or New York, you couldn't even walk down the street without seeing House of Cards. So they really stacked the deck to try to get a home run out of the gate with this. Now, I said I was going to contrast this with Amazon because Amazon's first original streaming show, I don't even know if you'll remember this, but it was a show called Alpha House. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, man, not really.
It was a John Goodman vehicle, and it was a sitcom about 4 Republican senators who have to live in the same apartment.
Is one of them Bob Dole?
No. Sorry.
Did they touch his peanut butter?
So also a data-driven decision, right? Like Amazon has all of these metrics and all that kind of stuff as well. And they crunch the numbers and they find out, boy, a surefire hit is a show about 4 Republican senators who have to live in the same place, which I don't even... I think that's how you get to decisions, is when you're using data and you don't put any logic to the data. Like, to me, that's where that decision came from. But anyway, they hired a perfectly competent TV director. They hired John Goodman to star, who is a perfectly competent actor, but he's no Kevin Spacey. And they did not have a hit right out of the gate. Now, the reason I'm bringing these two things up is because if Netflix had failed with House of Cards, it would have pushed this whole thing back 5-6 years before any streaming service would have tried to create something again. So Netflix, rightfully so, I think, understood the risk they were doing and the potential reward that they could have. So kudos to them for really setting this up, doing it well, putting the dollars behind it, and creating a hit show with House of Cards. Now, your question, how do they make money with this? My opinion, which does have some research behind it, is that Netflix's goal is not to create quality programming. They're not in the art business. They're in the business. All that they're concerned about is getting subscribers and keeping people watching and binge watching as much as they can. So the way I see Netflix today in 2025, and you could chart the progress of this, is that they're just making the same movie and the same show over and over and over again. You know, which is why if you look at like Red Notice with Ryan Reynolds, visually it is the exact same style as Enola Holmes with Miley Bobby Brown, which is the exact same visual style as Wednesday with Jenna Ortega. And the reason I think Wednesday is significant is because you take Tim Burton and you distill his visual style to the Netflix look. That's some serious power. Yeah. Like, I don't know how anyone controls Tim Burton and makes him tone down his style to be more into the Netflix style of thing, right? And if you watch documentaries on Netflix, they all look the same. You know, you could probably have a drinking game based on when the drone shot is going to come up in a Netflix documentary, because it's just their model. So the way they make money is it's quantity over quality. As long as that fire hose never stops giving, people feel compelled to subscribe, and they're going to keep watching it because it's become background noise. It's what FM radio used to be. People just turn Netflix on, whatever it is, they go about their day, they're only half paying attention to it, and when that show ends, you got 5 seconds before the next show begins.
Wow. That's a really that's comprehensive view on this.
I've thought about this a lot.
So from a financial standpoint, though, to get back with it, say you're Netflix chief of original programming or whatever the title is, and you've got $2 billion, just round numbers here. You got $2 billion. That's your entertainment budget for the year. Everything you make, TV show, whatever, it's going to be a movie for streaming, miniseries. It's got to come out of that $2 billion. So at that point, as you're laying everything out, it feels like, okay, I can make, for $2 billion, I can make 5 series, 12 movies, something like that, right? And you might look at that and say, okay, so, how do you justify that $2 billion spend against the number of subscriptions? How do you know what's successful and what's driving revenue is in new subscriptions? It seems very hard, right? And I'm sure that they have metrics that will help them understand how long the things get watched before they get abandoned. But it seems like you could start to cut that $2 billion, really, and start to cancel programs really easy without knowing whether those programs are kind of the linchpin to success. Just to try to save a buck, right? Because you're not funding a single movie or a single show or a single thing. It feels like Netflix is, it's got to create a whole slate of entertainment that rivals any movie studio or TV channel.
This is pertinent to what we're talking about, and I think that you might find this interesting. But as I was preparing for this episode, I found a list of all of the data that Netflix collects. Okay, so they collect when you pause, rewind, or fast forward, what day you watch content, the date you watch content, what time you watch content, where you watch your content, what device you use, when you pause or leave the content, and if you ever come back to the content, the ratings that you give, the searches that you conduct, your browsing and scrolling behavior, and it also collects data within movies, taking various screenshots to look in the moment of what is happening to viewers.
So they know everything about you.
Yeah.
They know like your deepest habits, like when you pause to go to the bathroom or get popcorn.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because I think your root question is, you have $2 billion. Wouldn't it be relatively hard to figure out, where you're going to make your money and where you're going to lose your money? I think that back during the House of Card days, there was some consideration to, is this a good story? Was this brought to us by people that we believe are good filmmakers, are good TV show runners? I think today it's purely down to that metric. And they can tell you within a very high percentage of accuracy, will people stream this? And again, that's their question. It's not, is this going to be a good show or is this going to be a good movie? It's, will people stream this? And I think that your Tiger King example is a prime point to content creation this way, right? Because is that lifting anyone up? Is that causing anyone to think? Is that, what we would consider
cause some severe mental disturbances from people who watch it?
Okay, it's not Citizen Kane.
No,
you know
right.
what I'm saying? But people watch it.
People they did watch it, right? I do think that benefited from that happening at the beginning of the lockdown when people were desperate for something new, and it created engagement and drama. Because they did try to come out with a sequel, a second season of Tiger King. Of course, the guy was already in prison, so it wasn't very terribly exciting, but it didn't get great ratings. So I don't know.
I don't know that viewing habits have changed since lockdown is no longer a thing, and since we're out of the pandemic. I kind of feel like, and I agree, I think that did create a perfect storm for shows like Tiger King, but I kind of feel like society is still in that soup of our own creation.
There's a foot still in it, probably. That famous metaphor of a foot in soup. Mixing my metaphors there. But I think that I don't know. I probably our habits haven't changed as much as I would like for them to. Right? I kind of want to let's go everything back to normal. Well, world changed a lot in those couple of years, and it's not going back to normal. So probably the streaming habits are very similar. I'm sure that it's an interesting point. They know everything about what you're watching and how you're watching it and when you start and when you stop. But with data like that, they can serve you up all kinds of good recommendations and serve you ads for products you're more likely to buy. So I think that they've got a revenue stream from that too.
And they can use that data to serve up their own content as opposed to their licensed content. Sure. Which is a complaint I have with Netflix as well, which is when I go to that Netflix screen and I'm looking at recently added to Netflix, 90% of it is Netflix's own content.
I think Prime does that more, prioritizes their things on Fire TV more than Netflix does. But either way, it is kind of like you're trying to influence my decision here by putting this front and center. That's advertising, right? But it is a little bit of an advantage over the other films on the platform and shows because they're not getting the same promotion that Netflix originals are.
And something that's interesting is nobody cares. I mean, even the studios that own the licensed content, they don't care because Netflix has already given them their check.
Right.
So whether people stream it or not is completely inconsequential. So the fact that Netflix is paying for this content and then burying it, they don't care. They're okay with that, because they're getting paid. And I've always struggled with the intersection of business and art, right? And I understand that it's a necessary evil and that there is no other way that you're going to get a $350 million Christopher Nolan film than if you intersect business and art. I'm not naive to be like, oh, this should just be for the purity of the storytelling. I get it, but it makes me uneasy. And I think streaming has exacerbated that point. So one of the questions you asked earlier is, are the people making the content served by the streaming model? I would argue no. I think that there was a point where it looked like they would be, and it looked like, oh, this is going to be a great home for the riskier content and for the stuff that's maybe more niche and more oddball. And I think that happened for a little while, but I think we have shifted hard on that pendulum to where it's Netflix. The only thing Netflix is interested in creating is the stuff that their data and their analytics say this is going to be viewed. And to be fair, when I'm saying Netflix, to me that's just a synonym for streaming, right?
It's the Xerox of streaming. Everybody,
there's except possibly for Apple, which I hesitate to give Apple any kind of credit as far as being the good guys. But every other streaming service is doing the exact same game. They're only interested in subscribers, only interested in how long they can keep your eyeballs glued to that screen.
I wonder, do they still do Nielsen ratings? You remember Nielsen, right? That's an old thing.
Yeah.
I know do they still do those kind of surveys for
They
streaming?
do.
Okay.
It took them a long time to adapt to streaming, and that was kind of the last moment where everybody was like, well, I guess this streaming thing's here to stay because you can now get Nielsen numbers for Netflix, so it was like 9-10 years after Netflix started streaming that Nielsen could finally get those numbers. But yes, that is a thing, and it still exists, and that is where a lot of the streaming data, as far as like a number of views and like that sort of stuff, all the streaming services lock that down, but you can get some idea from Nielsen. But to my knowledge, it is not nearly as accurate as Nielsen was for over-the-air broadcast.
That is fascinating. I wonder if you got someone to do that and journal it, and then you compared it to their actual watching habits. If they're like leaving things off, this is an embarrassing show. I'm not going to say I watch that.
Yeah, that is a very good question. And I would say that the data collection systems that the streaming services have on their own are probably way more accurate and way more valuable to them than what Nielsen is.
Sure.
Nielsen's kind of there for like variety, so that they can write intelligently about this kind of stuff. Like that kind of thing is the way I see it anyway. This is kind of the industry that I work in, but I'm not rubbing elbows with
Bill Neeson.
Yeah.
Bill Neeson, heir to the Neeson fortune. Now I've said the word Nielsen, not Neeson. I said the word so many times, you get into that mode where it sounds weird. You're like, am I saying it right? When I was a kid, I don't know if you remember this, it's totally off the subject of this, but on Nielsen, I was a kid, there was a rumor that if you had a Nielsen box that had a camera in it, it was watching everything that goes on in your house. Because I remember we had one for a period of time. It made me nervous. There's a camera in there. Of course, there wasn't a camera in there, and the technology didn't exist to do that, right? It wasn't, we can barely get that to function now some days.
You had your own broadcast satellite they installed in the backyard with the Nielsen
That's an
box.
uplink. Yep. For all the video, for all the spying we're doing on you. We got a video in the bathroom everywhere. Oh, that's great. Well, see, look, kids, we got a satellite dish. That is an urban legend. I'm sure that if you're old, if you're of a certain age, you remember that. Say in the middle, in between birth and death, somewhere right in the middle. Then, if you're one of those folks like us, you probably remember Nielsen. And
I always wanted one because I had the idea of like, oh, well, then I could control what kind of TV they create.
Right.
Because I would be sure that we only watch the things I want to watch.
Yes, this dude really is into Kids in the Hall. We need to get them in America. Yes.
I'm going to get that 4th season of Alf finally.
Yes, yeah. The other thing about it is, right, so all these streaming services, right, they made their bones with pre-existing content, then they got into original content. The pre-existing stuff, do you find, like, we were talking about just so many options. Do you ever see things on there that you're like, I did not know this existed. This is from a certain period of time, like it's from the 70s. And I occasionally run into those things that surprise me.
Yeah, I've discovered some great things streaming, right? And it's eventually you're going to ask me the question of would I go back and give up streaming for the way it used to be. I don't know that I would, even though I've done nothing but complain about streaming for the hour that we've been talking now, because it is wonderful to be able to have access to all of this stuff.
Everything.
And at arguably pretty high quality and have that ease of access. It's amazing. And if you'd told me that would have existed when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, I would have been like, what science fiction book are you reading? Because I got to get a copy of that. And the fact that it's here and it exists is remarkable.
But on the other hand, if it's not properly curated, you're discovering it by accident, right?
Yeah, and it makes it very difficult.
Best. Yeah.
And it's to the point where, like, I hesitate to watch stuff because I've just kind of been subconsciously trained that so much of this is garbage that, oh, well, whatever new thing has come across my screen is probably garbage too. So I find myself doing that. The other thing I find myself doing, and we haven't even touched on this yet, is they are not shy about canceling shows. And so if a new season of a new show, even if it's something that looks cool, I hesitate to watch
Right.
it because I'm like, well,
Get invested.
am I going to get invested in this? And then it just is going to go
Yep.
away. So like that is a new thing that now I have to have anxiety over and deal with as someone who passionately consumes movies.
That's
and
the
television.
Firefly effect.
Right. Which, I mean, and don't get me wrong, that existed in broadcast as well.
Right.
It just seems more possible in streaming, I guess.
Yeah.
Like with broadcast, if they took a pilot to series, there was at least some kind of commitment there. Whereas Netflix, it feels like, oh, we asked for 12 episodes, but this is failing at 5, so we're cutting our losses.
Yep.
And that's rough.
That is an element of uncertainty for the content producers, but there's also chances, I think. It feels like they can take chances and that people might get the opportunity to make films or TV series or do work that they otherwise wouldn't get to do if Netflix and all those folks weren't taking some risks. I think Netflix is more risk averse. I think they've got a pattern and that they basically follow big stars headlining movies, music, documentaries, right? They've got a pattern. You can pretty much guess. If most things fit in that. There's not I don't think, an ethos to Netflix. Just, we have everything. Come find it. Come dig through it. That could be the motto. I think we are largely better off, and I think the content producers are better off. I do think that we would all benefit from better organization, better presentation of the streaming services, because they all need some work, right? Some are harder than others to find, harder to find things on than others. But I do think that they could do a better job of giving you, I mean, they're already tracking so much and they know so much about you. You gave Netflix's, but everybody kind of lives under that, right? I'm sure all the others look very similar. They know everything about you. They could do a better job finding obscure films for you and helping you through that. I think that would help the experience a lot. But I think I will stay right where I'm at, even though I do have some nostalgia for how things were 20 years ago.
I probably agree with you. There is a part of me that wants to be the Luddite and say, no, let's go back. But if I did, I worry that it would be like one of those Twilight Zone episodes where I've gone back and now I'm like, oh, what did I do?
Yes.
And, I can't get back to the future. Hey, that'd be a good title for a movie. Anyway, I probably agree with you that it's better off now, but I will disagree with you that it's better off for the creators. I don't see the freedom being given. I don't see the risks being taken by anyone, and you've had a few outliers. You've had Severance on Apple TV has done very well. You had Stranger Things on Netflix that's done very well. You got a couple. Mandalorian did very well.
Yep.
You got a couple that kind of broke through, and it's like, okay, well, under the old system, there's no way that would have been made. But I think by and large, this idea, which was floated to the world, which is this is going to be a bastion for artistic expression, I do not think that's come to pass. Interestingly enough, I think it's opened up the door for like a studio like an A24 to come in and to say, you know what, we're going to do even a different model. We're not going to go back to the old model. We're going to create another blue ocean, right? We're going to start a movie studio that does smaller films, that's more reasonably budgeted, that is the risk taker, and we're going to market based on that. So if you are one of these film buffs that wants to see, the latest crazy, really creative material, then you look for that A24 logo, and then there you go. And if we could get to a position where more of that could happen, then I think we could reach an equilibrium, and then it really would be great for everybody. But I think one of our stumbling blocks to that utopian future is quantity. And I wish everyone would slow down. I wish Netflix and all the Hollywood studios and all the TV channels, I wish they would make less content.
Yes. And you'll find somebody say, hey, have you heard of this show? Like, oh, no, is that new? It's been on 7 seasons. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Steve Martin has a show that's been on for seasons. How did this happen?
Yeah. And I think that is a real problem. And I think that because they want to keep the floodgates open and they want to just deluge us with content, I think that they, in the long term, are hurting themselves by doing that. And I wish that everybody could just get together in a room and say, you know what, let's tap the brakes a little bit and let's limit how much we're going to produce, because I think that would be better for everyone. You're never going to have another MASH. You're never going to have another Cheers. It just cannot happen in this world. And even when you have a Stranger Things, which is the closest you'll ever come, I mean, the numbers are fractions of what those old shows would pull. And I think there's something special about having that zeitgeist where everybody comes together and everybody sees the same thing. I think that that is good for society, and we have taken that away from us.
And, things like Stranger Things, they take years to get a season out.
Yeah.
Right? There's that long periods of waiting that, the old style shows, they were on a schedule, and you knew when the season started, you knew when it ended, and you had the break, and then it started back up. And now it's like, oh, you like The Witcher? Yeah, the new episodes are going to be out in 2027. I think they announced that recently. It's going to be 2027 for the next season, I believe. And I didn't watch the show, but man, that's like 3 years from the last season. If not, maybe it could be more. It's like, I don't understand. Maybe you're making too much, or maybe you're making the shows too big. Like everything's an event. I don't know. I think I see your point. The one thing I will say is that the noise does create opportunities for people to get things made and to learn and to grow. So I think that there is a positive to the noise. Now, some of the noise is just garbage that was made 10 years ago that they're buying and slapping on streaming and those sorts of things, or a lot of foreign language stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to watch this. I'm not going to watch something dubbed or subtitled. I'm too tired. Let me put on Adam Sandler's Ridiculous Six. That's what I want to watch. That's what I need, is a bad Adam Sandler movie. And Adam Sandler and his pal Nick Swardson, the very unfunny Nick Swardson, can make another ridiculous movie. That I'll watch, but some of this, there's a lot of stuff in the noise that it's just like, man, this filler. But at least it's giving someone an opportunity to make money off their work and work that they might otherwise not have a venue for if we did not have streaming. Because the traditional broadcast method just did not have the same opportunities.
Maybe. I wish I believed that was happening more than I do.
Yeah, and it's not an easy answer, right? Because we can look at it and, there's a lot of stuff to dig through on all these things. But you will find the gem in there. What would be nice is if they used all that, like I said this before, they used all the things they know about you to help you find the gems.
That would be nice if they would curate for me. And I think that's a really valid point and not something I thought about till you said it. But it would be super easy for Netflix to say, oh, you watched 16 seasons of this, you're probably going to like that, and present that to me. And they do to an extent.
But it's not very good.
It's not very good, and also I feel like that they are intentionally pushing that away in favor of their produced content.
Right.
Because
we recommend you watch, and it's not, some of it's just based on we want someone to watch this. So we're going to recommend you watch this.
Yes.
You logged into Netflix, so based on that, you should watch our original production. Yeah. Who used to do this and did a really good job? It's a name you probably haven't heard in a while. It's TiVo. The TiVo boxes had a service that would go find things that it thought you liked. It did a good job. And this was all, think about it, totally third party, right? They didn't know any of the content. They had to go scrape it. There was nothing in it for them in the sense that they weren't getting you to, trying to get you to buy TiVo stuff. And it worked pretty well. I remember it recording some interesting things for me back in the day when, TiVo was still relevant.
Yeah, that idea of a third party is a great idea. And for a while, I thought maybe Roku was going to provide that service for us, but that they really didn't step up to the plate to say, we're not going to dip into the content serving. We're just going to be the aggregator that brings it all to you through one pipeline. So I feel like in today's world, it's impossible for someone to take that role. I don't see that happening, just because everybody is too concentrated on what makes the most money as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that is business, right? And the impersonalness of modern business, right? You don't invest in things you have a passion for. You invest in things that you think are going to get a return. So when they start to not get returns, you don't invest in them, right?
Right.
It's
which is fine for billionaires, but if you work solely by that model, you never get a Blade Runner.
Yeah,
you never get you know, you never get, and It's a Wonderful Life. Because those were made because somebody believed in this story. And you could go through countless things and give examples where financially this didn't make sense. Somebody believed in it, and it became, well, Star Wars, for crying out loud.
Star Wars, Godfather.
Right. These would have never been made if we were using the Netflix model. But because they completely changed the landscape of narrative visual storytelling. And I worry that is the real casualty of streaming, is that we're not creating an environment where that kind of thing can happen.
So you think the studio system, let me see if I can track your thinking here, is a better environment for that sort of thing, the network, the studio system, than the streamers and the various content producers for the streamers?
For content creation, I will go on record saying I think that the studio system is superior to the streaming model. For content consumption, maybe streaming is better, maybe.
I think I think I have a sense in my gut, without any logic to back it up, that the old way was better for the producers. I think that they got more stability. They would go to the studio. They would record in the studio with other shows, or with sitcoms and things like that. And I feel like that there's more stability and regularity to that model. Shows would stay on for many years. They became classics. I'm thinking any of these streaming shows, I mean, there's a lot of them that were nice flashes in the pan, but I doubt we'll be talking about in a few years. Even some that cost billions, like the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power series. We won't be talking about that like we, for example, talk about Lost in Space from the 60s, which was a cheesy show, right? That, but people still love it, right? It had charm, and it was allowed to exist in that day because of that system. And could something that silly ever exist and be accepted again? I don't think so. But yeah, while I agree with that, I think I'm strongly in agreement that it's better for the consumer. We get all kinds of choice, and we have choices of how we watch the movies. We can watch them phones, laptops, on our television. We can choose the type of interface we want by buying different boxes, Roku, Apple TV, etc., Fire TV. So I think that there's a lot of power there for the consumer. I think we are better off. I do think that from a financial standpoint, I'm probably paying now for our services what I paid for satellite dish, or maybe close. It's still better with more choices. And when it rains, my TV works. Unlike with a satellite dish, it would very often just stop working for 20 minutes while it rained. So I think that I think that I'm with you on the consumer side, and I think that I'm leaning that way on the producer side. But I just don't know enough to know, other than a gut feeling, that they're not getting the same chances.
I think that's fair, and there were a lot of things that I had written down that we didn't even cover. I mean, like, I think there's a lot of research that points to binge watching really being an unhealthy practice. And it is completely streamers' motivation to encourage you to binge watch. I think that we didn't even talk about what's happening to pacing in narrative storytelling because of streaming. I think that it's having a real effect there. Things are longer that shouldn't be. And I think that you could draw a direct line between streaming success and the reason we got an Obi-Wan TV show instead of an Obi-Wan movie, because they're like, oh, we could milk this for more episodes and get more views out of it. And I don't think those things are good for storytelling or for making entertainment. But I also admit that I do come at this from a more literary pie in the sky kind of perspective. Where
you do have a bias.
I do. I do. And I'll admit that.
That's okay. As long as you own your bias, I think that's okay. And I have a bias too. I like convenience. So, that's, the digital stuff is always going to feel better to me. But I think I see a world where the digital is not ideal for those that are making it. Making the content. I see that.
It's an interesting conversation. So the core question that we're here to answer today is, are you entertained? What do you think? Are you entertained?
Well, I mean, first of all, it eats up a good 2 hours of my night just scrolling around inside these interfaces trying to find something. So that's good. That's a good way to pass the time. I think it's productive. And then we'll watch something and fall asleep halfway through. No, I know I like discovering new things too, right? And never discovered anything new. In the old way, right? I mean, I rarely, right? I just like, what's on TNT tonight? Okay, well, that's a weird movie. I'll, check that out. That would happen every once in a while, but not terribly often. Or, hey, Blade's on. You want to watch Blade, honey? Now get out of here. Like, okay, I'll go back in the other room and watch Blade. Let me know if you want to come watch it. I'll rewind it. But I do like discovering new things. Like last night, we found a documentary on the shooting on the set of Rust that was outstanding. It was on Hulu. It was outstanding. It was great, really informative, and really made you think about the whole situation, how it came about and how it could have been handled. But, so I like that discovery that still occurs. It just doesn't occur without, there's nothing tactile to it, right? It's just flipping around screens or Googling, hey, what's new, and seeing what came out this week and going and finding it, which can be surprisingly hard, which shouldn't be so hard. But
I agree, it shouldn't be. Am I entertained? I'm probably entertained more than I wish I were. And what I mean by that is, about a year ago, maybe, we were sitting on the couch and scrolling through the Netflix UI and couldn't find anything to watch. And I, in a fit of sigh and frustration, I said, I wish I took more time to read. And so my wife said, okay, I'm tired of hearing you complain about that. We are shutting the TV off, and we're not turning the TV on for 6 months, and you've got time to read. And it was such a lovely breath of fresh air. I acknowledge that at any point I am in control, and I can turn off the TV, and I can pick up a book, or I can walk outside, or I can do something else that is actual, useful, beneficial entertainment. And that more times than I care to admit, I choose to just keep scrolling through the user interface of whatever streamer I'm on. I do sometimes wish that it wasn't solely on my shoulders to make that decision. I miss the time of as a kid, even with cable TV, when you had like 60, 70 channels, there would come a point where it's like, I've cycled through these 5 times and I still haven't found anything to watch. I'm turning the TV off. I'm going to go do something else. And I miss that.
And now if you have so much to cycle through, you never make that decision.
Exactly.
So really, it's like, well, I mean, I'll keep searching. Let me go and open this app. And occasionally I will go to we have Sling, which is it's like an analog of a cable service or a satellite service. It has many channels. I don't know, like 120 channels, and I'll go through it. I miss this. There's still nothing on, but I miss this.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's that quantity again, right? Like there's so much that people, if you choose not to be, you'll never be bored. And I think there's a benefit to humanity to be bored every once in a while. I think it makes you use your imagination a little bit more. And I do miss that. So am I entertained? Yeah, I would be stupid to say I'm not entertained. I'm not sure that I'm completely pleased with the way that I am entertained.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I think we beat this horse to death. I think that's a good answer. Chris, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find more entertaining stuff, right? They don't have to stream through that. We don't have 10,000 episodes. We've only got like 60, something like that.
Two Middle-Aged Guys, streaming now on Netflix. Oh, no, wait. Actually, that's not true. To find us at Two Middle-Aged Guys, the numeral 2, middleagedguys.com. From there, you can find access to our socials, to our RSS feeds. You can subscribe to us at any podcast method that you prefer. You can find us on YouTube. We post all of our episodes up there. And more importantly, going to that website will allow you to reach out to us and contact us and tell us what you think. Who's made some salient points about streaming? What do you guys think about streaming? Are you a fan of it, or do you find it frustrating? Can we all band together and get Netflix to remake their UI, for crying out loud? That would be wonderful. But send us a note. Let us know what you think. And we enjoy making these episodes and having that two-way conversation.
All right. Thanks, folks. I never know how to end these episodes.